So we spoke about the problem of ego. I now want to
Yeah.
talk about some characteristic traits of successful business owners, and I think the best place to start, because it does tie in with ego, is extreme ownership.
I'd say, yeah, extreme ownership and resilience, they go hand in hand, don't they?
Oh, certainly.
But
If you embrace extreme ownership without being a resilient individual, you'll crumble very
yeah.
quickly.
Now, I was quite annoyed with myself, to be honest. I thought I'd coined the phrase extreme ownership for last summer's event, for that presentation I did. But then I looked into it more and I realised that certainly it's someone else, Jocko Willink, the former Navy SEAL.
Willock.
It's Willink.
Willock.
It's Willink, I think.
It's Willock.
Both reach for their Google. Willink, thank you.
Oh, I'm getting confused with Joseph Willock, who plays for Newcastle.
Yeah, because he was a former fucking Navy SEAL, wasn't he? For fuck's sake, Connor. Anyway.
Hey, one's black, one's white.
Yeah, they're absolutely nothing like each other. One's a black footballer.
I know.
One's a black English footballer. And the other one's a fucking white ex-Navy SEAL. Other than that, they're the same person. I've never seen them in the same room at the same time together. Fucking twat.
Oh, me neither. Oh, God. I've got a bit of red there. That's hilarious.
Well, that's your ego, mate. Jocko Willink.
Ego flame can't be seen
very
to be
red, haven't you? Oh, you're nice and warm here. So Jocko Willink, he at least used the phrase extreme ownership before I did, and probably other people too. I'm going to think about it. It's not a difficult phrase to come up with, but that's not the point. You know, no. Credit's due. The point is, I learned that the discipline of extreme ownership when I first read a book by a guy called Robert Ringer. I can't remember which book it was. But Robert Ringer, the libertarian author, probably about 15 years ago. It was certainly before I moved here. So, and he tells it with a story where he's having some people in to do some decorating on the outside of his house, painters, and they drop a ladder on his car, and it makes a right fucking mess of it, as you'd imagine. And he basically tries to say, you need to pay for my car, and they just said no. So he tried to sue them, and he kind of goes through this long story of how he's trying to nail these bastards down, and they're really slippery, trying to get them to pay for his car, these painters. And I think they might even counter-sue him for leaving his car in the way, that kind of, this is America. And then he says that in a moment of clarity, he realised he was spending far more than it would cost to fix the car, just because he wanted to be right. That's it. Little bit like people who argue about a 6-inch strip of land between two houses, and they'll spend hundreds of thousands of pounds about where the fence post should be, or which side of the fence post the fence should sit, that kind of thing. Who cares? Well, that's, again, classic ego. And he says, in that moment, he just thought, fuck it. Well, he didn't swear, but he says, I realised I was wasting my time. So from that moment on, he says, I've taken responsibility for everything that happens to me. And even if it's not my fault, if it's someone else's fault, there's no point in chasing them necessarily. I mean, there might be sometimes a case of reparations in the courts, but for the most part, let it go and focus on fixing it, because it'll cost you less in the long run. And also, it gives you a better sense of control. And again, going back to Dev, my doctor friend, he says sometimes people come to him with the most awful diagnosis, because he's a cancer surgeon, you know. It comes to him with the most awful diagnosis, but once they know what it is, and then they have choices to make about whether it's chemo, surgery, both, or nothing, basically, they feel a lot better. It doesn't change the situation or even the outcome materially. You know, maybe they're going to die anyway. It's just like when and how. But as soon as they accept responsibility for it, for making a choice, and they have some control over what happens next, they feel better. And you'll find everyone listening to this, you know, any situation that might come up, the worst thing you can do is sit there feeling helpless. Just taking action, no matter how futile and pointless it might be, leaves you feeling better, because there's some agency there, or at least it feels like it. And of course, once you start making choices and taking action, things might happen to lead you to better choices, better decisions, better actions. If you sit there waiting for something to happen to you, but you feel like shit and it just happens anyway.
I often hear business owners talk about, wish I had more control on a certain situation, but it's out of my hands. This is happening to me.
Oh man.
Which is completely and utterly the incorrect response. Take responsibility for all the shit that's happening to you in your company. Oh, what am I meant to do? My staff are useless. You fucking hide them, you daft cunt.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're your responsibility. The way they behave whilst employed at your company is your fault and your responsibility. Oh, can't control people. Ugh, ridiculous mindset. Never adopt that victim mindset. It's a terrible one to have.
No, it's like people who've got dogs, right? Now, dogs can be house trained, but sometimes even a well-trained adult dog will have an accident. Maybe you leave it for too long, or it just gets caught short. Come downstairs to a turd in the hallway or a piss on the floor. There's no point whatsoever in shouting at the dog and blaming the dog. The dog has got no idea why you're shouting at it. All it does is make the dog feel like shit because the dog wants to please you. Look at yourself and say, well, actually, maybe I should have not given it so much water before bedtime. Maybe there's something wrong with the dog and I need to go to the vet. Or, I tell you what, I'll just clear up the mess. How about that? There's no point. It's like hitting children.
I like to see things like that. I like to see things like that. And I say this to Tamsin all the time. It's the cost of the spoils. You get all the spoils having a beautiful companion in the shape of a doggy. The cost is they might piss or shit on the floor every now and again. And is that a fair trade? 9 times out of 10, yeah. So then it's just the cost of the spoils. Cost of the spoils. It's going out for dinner. You get brought the wrong thing. Oh, well, I chose to go here. I like going here. It's cost of the spoils. Got a choice to make now. I can either send it back, but whatever I do, I'll do it in a pleasure manner. This slight inconvenience is just the cost of the spoil of eating out.
And that's all it is, isn't it? A slight inconvenience.
That's all it is. It's the same as...
Someone brought you the wrong food. First world fucking problem.
I remember when my eye essentially exploded after being hit with a football, which is ridiculous. A size 5 football somehow managed to avoid my eyebrow bones, my nose bone, my cheek bones, whatever this part is, and managed to hit me right in the corner of my eye. Fuck knows how.
Good shot. I'd like to shake the hand of the man who did it.
He was actually my best friend.
Oh, so
which
told
is
you.
Weird because it was a team of 20 odd players and I only had one friend in the whole team of wankers looking back, and he was the one who did it. Anyway, the surgeons were so shocked that they thought I was lying. They said, you can tell us the truth. We don't care if you was in a fight or something. I said, no, a football hit me. And they went, oh, was you playing with like a small tennis ball? I was like, no, a size 5 football hit me. And they just couldn't wrap their heads around it. They were like, wow, the odds of that, you're so unfortunate. And rather than getting upset with my best friend, who was inconsolable, as you can imagine at the time, we thought I was going to lose my sight, rather than getting angry, why me, this, that, and the other, it's the cost of playing football. You're going to get injured. How can I be surprised when I get injured? It's my fault.
Yeah, it's people are very big on mental health these days, to the point it's fucking irritating. But the one thing they don't want to do, many of these people, is take responsibility, which requires that dirty word, resilience, because then it's victim blaming.
Yeah.
Now, let's take a really extreme example of resilience. Women get raped, say, and we see it all the time. You know, and I'm not. And again, when I start talking like this, people will say, "Oh, so you think it's okay to rape people?" You know, real Kathy Newman stuff to Jordan Peterson. Roll your eyes. No, that's not what I'm saying. Women get raped, or people get their children get killed by drunk drivers. These things, awful things happen. They really do, and it's fucking tragic. And they never should, but they do. When that happens to you, or to someone you love, you have one choice: what you do about it. Now, some women, some people, some parents, they will spend the rest of their lives saying, so-and-so ruined my life. This is what they did, and my life has been ruined. And they might be like that for, I don't know, 30, 40, 50 years and die. I know someone who had an abortion at 15, and her parents basically said, well, we're not supporting you to have the child, so it's up to you. Well, now she's going around, now she's coming up for 50, she's saying, oh, my parents made me have an abortion. No, they didn't. And it ruined my life. Well, that's your choice. You're letting it ruin your life. And other people, they have these bad things happen, and they say, well, I took what I could from it, and then I just let the rest go. Now, this comes down to what we call forgiveness. Now, forgiveness is a very resilient thing to do, but it's mostly misunderstood. It's not what the Christians often think about turning the other cheek, allowing people to do what they want, saying to people, you treated me really badly and it's okay, come back and do it again. It's not like that at all. The analogy I like to use is you're carrying a burden. That is all the fucking worry and angst you have about this situation, this thing happening to you. And you've got someone else who's perhaps walking along as well. They're the guilty. They are actually the guilty party. And you're carrying this burden that they've given you, and you're pissing and moaning about having to carry this burden. Well, forgiveness is actually about putting that burden down and saying, you can do what you like with this burden. It's yours, not mine. I'm just going to carry on without it. It's yours now, not mine. And what happens to them, what they do with it, is entirely up to them. You just move on. That's how I see being forgiveness, really. That's what forgiveness is. It's this personal, internal thing. And of course, most of all, you need to forgive yourself. Most of us are carrying burdens around of things we've done that we cannot change in the past. And they're stopping us from realizing our full potential and certainly realizing our full happiness. It's pointless. You cannot change what's happened to you or what you've done. What you can do, if appropriate, is apologize, pay reparations, make amends if you can. But what you need to do, regardless of what you can do, is move on. People just don't want to.
It's very fitting that a short, bald man with a shiny head is speaking about forgiveness.
How so?
It's accredited to Buddhism, the power of forgiveness.
Oh, right.
And obviously, Buddha.
I'm not a Buddhist.
Much like that.
I'm not a Buddhist.
I know you're not, but it's a Buddhist trait. Forgiveness.
It's also a Stoic trait.
Releasing.
When you think about it, you would expect it to be form follows function.
Has a lot of overlap.
Form follows function. So.
Yeah, exactly. Forgiving something removes all the power it has over you. Holding on to that resentment, a grudge, is still it's eating away at you, is the cringiest way to put it.
Talking about power, as you just mentioned, I think. Yeah, power. In a negotiation, this goes back to ego as well. In a sales negotiation, if you don't have any emotional connection or emotional dependence on the outcome, and so you're free to walk away, you will win every time. Because in any negotiation, the person who's most willing to walk away from the table has all the power. Now, we just found this in a negotiation, you remember, we had with our construction client. And because he was willing to walk away right at the last minute, no matter what, he got the settlement he wanted. Because the others were not prepared to walk
squeaky
away.
Bum time.
Yeah.
If you can hold your nerve in squeaky bum time,
and if you genuinely don't care if you get the sale or not, so they start pushing for discounts, you just say, no, this is the price. If you don't want it, then fine, just tell me now. Are we wasting our time here? What are we trying to do here? If you don't want it at this price, then just say so. There's no negotiation. There's no discount. So continuing the conversation in this vein is a waste of my time, a waste of yours. Are we doing this or not? Most people haven't got the courage to say that. That's why they give discounts.
And in business, you're going to face difficulties. You're going to face difficult negotiations. Yeah, you're going to face difficult decisions and tough times. It's inevitable. It's the cost of playing the game.
The football.
I've never met a successful business owner without resilience. And I don't believe so anyway.
No. And it is
the ability to trudge through no matter what. Pardon?
It is what people lack.
Increasingly so. I watched that What is a Woman documentary.
Oh, God. That sounds dire.
It's by some. To be fair, I'm not keen on the fellow that did it, but it was an interesting show nevertheless. And he was basically talking about how we're raising children who are not very resilient whatsoever
Oh
because we
God!
allow them to believe whatever they want to believe now.
I saw a post on LinkedIn the other day, right? And there was one. There was one about a year ago. It was last summer. It was a woman who was writing this long post about how her daughter was, what was the word, distraught, and it was injurious to her mental health because, and I swear I'm not making this up, because she'd had a sleepover cancelled. Okay. And then a few days ago, I saw a post from another woman. This was a Brit saying how her son had been introduced to his new school just before the summer break. I think they do that now, don't they? Basically, bear in mind this was a secondary school,
Yeah.
so he's a teenager, I guess, 15, 14?
On the cusp.
Yeah.
No, younger.
But he's not a child, is he? He's not a young child.
12, 13.
Okay. You would expect him to have some adult characteristics being knocked into him. But anyway, she was pissing and moaning because he hadn't been put in the same study group as his best friend, and he'd been promised before that would happen. And she was, I mean, it wasn't just like, this is pretty shitty and he's a bit upset. This was essentially, she was saying this was an assault on his mental health. And I'm thinking, if this is how we're raising our children, we have no fucking future at all. People are weak. And as Jordan B. Peterson says, if you're weak, then humility is not a virtue because you've got no fucking option but to be humble. If you're weak, you don't have a choice. If you're strong, then you have the choice. I don't like weak people.
Yeah. No, definitely not.
I detest them.
A good way to build resilience is just to reframe everything. Just reframe it. How can you reframe that into a positive? Oh, my child's now going to make more friends because he's not going to be just snogging his best mate and not talking to anyone else. So my child's actually going to become a better, well-adapted, all-round child as opposed to being someone with one friend their whole life. They're going to be able to deal with different types of people. They're going to learn how to introduce themselves, things that are only beneficial in social settings. And typically most people get jobs and they're desirable traits for employed people. So it's a bonus.
Well, reframing is an incredibly powerful thing to do. And the NLP crowd think they invented it, but they didn't. And it goes, again, all the way back to Stoicism, how you look at something. Remember my birthday before last, my 57th birthday, we had a feral cat, and it was happened to be my birthday, and it came to the house. And I caught it and took it to the vet because we thought it had got cat flu. Turns out it had got a fucking great big tumour in its face, so they put it down. I got a history with cats at that vet. That's 5 now.
Suspicious.
And people were saying to me, what an awful thing to happen on your birthday. And I says, well, no. I says, what actually happened was I was able to stop a fellow creature's suffering because it was in agony. How it survived for that long with a fucking tumour in its face, I don't know. But the vet said it must have been suffering terribly. Well, I got to stop that from suffering further. You know? It's the same situation. It's just how I chose to look at it.
And you didn't have to get a chicken on the way home for dinner.